Hey guys, this is the Rank Kid here, and I'm back with the eighth episode of RKSalutes. And RKSalutes is basically where I talk about the shit that I like, obviously. And today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite band, the Beatles. Now, the Beatles don't need an introduction, or nor do I need to explain who they are because everybody knows them, whether they've heard them on the radio, seen the shirts, or even anything else, I guess. And they're basically one of the best bands to come out of the 60s. And as much as I did used to be a Rolling Stones fanboy back in 2014, I personally think that the Beatles were way better than the Rolling Stones, to be honest. Even though that the Rolling Stones did try to mimic the Beatles, not sound wise, but they just tried to do the stuff that made the Beatles successful. From what I've heard, and I've heard from that John Lennon interview. Rest in peace, John Lennon and George Harrison. So, anyways, the band consisted of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr. And they did have other members before Ringo or George, I think. But hey, they went off to do bigger and better things, I'm assuming. And the Beatles are also known for having, like, what? One of the greatest albums out there and one of the most, like, what? Influential ones. And I guess one of them that I can name that I've been listening to a lot is Revolver. Trust me, if you want to like what listen to a Beatles album that is really experimentalish with rock music and psychedelic stuff, I suggest either Sergeant Pepper, Revolver, or I guess the White Album. I mean, they just made some good stuff over the years, and even though that the band only lasted for one decade because stuff started to tension, and then John Lennon made the statement that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, and everybody took that to heart back then. Like everybody just took that to heart. They burnt the Beatles records. They burnt everything that had the Beatles on them, which was just a complete overreaction. And just like what an overly defensive thing that that the public did to them. But anyways, they're basically one of the greatest rock bands I've ever heard, and they still have fans to this day too. That's what I like about them, and that's what I like about like what certain bands that have broken up over like what the spawn of a couple of years, or maybe even more than just a couple of years, I guess. Like they'll still have fans. I mean, even though that the Beatles aren't together anymore, they still have a strong fan base. Cause even though that like what they're not together anymore, that they won't live on, but they'll live on through the music. They'll always do. That's the one thing that you gotta remember. Any band that can be dead or alive, they're still gonna live on through the music regardless, in my opinion. But these guys are just awesome. Especially they'll have like what the primary lyrics about love, relationships, or maybe personal experiences once in a while, or maybe about a character, or just jealousy, everything, man. And they've also had a couple of movies, and one of them that everybody knows is Yellow Submarine, which I haven't gotten a chance to listen to that album. Maybe I will, or watch the movie, just whatever. And they also just released a new like what this new CD that has like what I guess archived videos from the 60s of them, maybe performances from TV, because they stopped doing shows in 66 because of the whole because of John Lennon's statement, and just people just getting hostile about it and stuff. And they're just very amazing. And I just love how they were just so experimental. And there was even some critics that called this album, yeah, they called this album, I think, the first modern album ever, I think. I mean, I think that's what they called it, or just the first album that had modern music. I don't know. It's just a masterpiece to me. Same thing goes for Revolver. I have to say that again. Revolver is another one you should try out. And if you're just getting into the Beatles, listen to this. You won't regret it. Just listen to A Hard Day's Night or just any Beatles album. Just explore. And oh yeah, and another thing that I like about them is that there's fans online that will have Facebook pages dedicated to them, and Facebook groups, Instagram accounts dedicated to them that post Beatles 24/7 or fan art. Because, like I said, even though that they're not together anymore, they still have fans of all ages, whether it be old or young or fetus. I don't. Yeah. So to wrap this up, the Beatles are awesome, and they're way better than the Rolling Stones, in my opinion. And if you like the Rolling Stones, then good for you, because I still like them too, even though I think that the Beatles are better. But whatever. So this is the Rank Kid here, and peace.